Hey guys, many of you asked me to make this video, and here it is, finally. How did the dinosaurs die or become extinct? So in the first video I showed you that the dinosaurs lived with humans and not millions of years ago. In the Bible they are called Tannin, meaning dragons. The word dinosaur was only created much later in the 1800s. Now, a lot of people say the dinosaurs probably died at the flood. Other people say, who believe in evolution, no, they died millions of years ago at the Ice Age. Only birds survived. Now they say that a lot of the birds are actually the evolved dinosaurs. Well, that's not what the Bible says, and that's not the truth. The fact is that the dinosaurs went with Noah on the ark. Genesis 7 verse 13. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. They and every beast, not some beasts, every beast, according to its kind. And all the livestock, according to their kinds. And every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, according to its kind. And every bird, according to its kind. Every winged creature. So, every animal of its kind. That includes dinosaurs. Now you might say, Daniel, that's just crazy. Dinosaurs are huge. So there's no way that huge dinosaurs could have been brought on the ark with all of the other animals as well. Well, that might be true. Not huge dinosaurs and huge animals, but babies, definitely. It will be much easier and wiser to take small animals into the ark and not big and old ones, so that after the flood they could have lived longer and produced more babies. Big dinosaurs were big, well, some of them depending on their kind, right? But the babies were, well, babies, small. Do you know what the biggest egg fossil is that they found of dinosaurs? The biggest dinosaur egg fossil was around the size of a football. That's it. That's close to an ostrich egg. So imagine the size of dinosaur that could come out of that egg. Not very big, right? And then, before the flood, they had hundreds of years to grow, right? Remember lizards, they never stop growing, and so they have hundreds of years to grow, because that's how old the people got at that time as well. Very, very old, some over 900 years old. And the ark was a lot bigger than people think. The Ark encounter in northern Kentucky shows us. They created the Ark replica according to the instructions of the Bible, and so doing proved that it was possible to bring so many different animals on the Ark. Take some time and go visit them when you have the chance. So, after the flood, these baby dinosaurs went into nature and they repopulated. They had babies and they just got more. So what happened to them? Why don't we see them here anymore today? Well, let's just back up a little bit. I honestly believe that they did repopulate the earth, spread across the land with more dinosaurs, and I believe this is why we have so many dragon legends from different cultures across the globe. Now just hang in, because I'm going to tell you about these legends, these interesting stories in a bit. First of all, I believe that the world they stepped into after the flood was extremely different. It was devastated by the flood, right? So the pre-flood world, called the antediluvian period, it was 2 different worlds. There was now more water, which also divided certain countries, as it is still today. But before the flood, the land was more connected, called by some as Pangea. And now God himself also made a few changes. We see that in Genesis 9 verse 1. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. Now remember, before the fall, Adam and Eve and the animals there, they only ate plants, fruits, nuts, veggies, all that kind of stuff. But then after the fall, it changed. Some humans probably started to eat animals, but only after the flood, God made it official. That's what we read in the Bible. In those early years after the flood, it was probably not as easy just to live from plants anymore because, well, the flood just devastated the land. And so people had to start killing and eating animals to survive. Many species and humans struggled and are still struggling to survive in this new world today. Many died and many are dying today. A lot of dinosaurs also died. As we can see in the fossil records, many plants, animals, dinosaurs died and became extinct. There are even plants and animals rapidly becoming extinct even to this day. According to the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, more than 42,100 species are threatened with extinction right now. You know, we humans are killing everything. And we've been doing it for a very long time. Some people care and some people don't care at all. Just look at the mess that our oceans are in. Ocean life decreasing at an alarming rate. According to the Global Citizen, 22 animals went extinct in the US alone in 2021. These are beautiful animals like the Bachman's warbler, the ivory-billed woodpecker, flat-beaked mussel, the Molokai creeper, and so forth. So many animals, including dinosaurs, have become extinct over the years because of factors like environmental changes, diseases, genetic problems, natural catastrophes, lack of food, and people kill them. People hunted dinosaurs for food, leather, ivory, and other things, just like we killed millions of animals in the last 100 years. Trophy hunting is also a huge factor. In South Africa, you used to have elephants walking everywhere, and huge ones with huge tusks. When humans moved in, they built towns and whole communities, and they killed every one of them. Trophy hunters killed out all the best DNA. You know, the DNA of those big elephants with the huge tusks of 2 to 3 meters, they don't exist anymore. And guess how many wild animals like lions, elephants, cheetahs walk around here in the wild in South Africa? 0. None. Just some deer here and there. You can only find them in safari parks now, like the Kruger National Park. But humans did not create safari parks back when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. People are scared of wild animals, beasts like lions, tigers, elephants, and so whenever you see a civilization moving into an area, they kill off all dangerous animals because people don't want them around their houses. They want to be safe. And we've basically killed off all dangerous animals in South Africa in just this last 100 years. Now imagine how people could have hunted dinosaurs called dragons back then from the time of the flood up until now. That's over 4,300 years. Well, if they did, you would expect us to have evidence of it somewhere, right? Even just a little bit. Do we? A lot. Everywhere. Answers in Genesis mentions a few. A Sumerian story dating back to 2000 BC or earlier tells of a hero named Gilgamesh, who, when he went to fell cedars in a remote forest, encountered a huge vicious dragon that he slew, cutting off its head as a trophy. When Alexander the Great, 330 BC, and his soldiers marched into India, they found that the Indians worshipped huge hissing reptiles that they kept in caves. China is renowned for its dragon stories, and dragons are prominent on Chinese pottery, embroidery, and carvings. England and several other cultures retain the story of St. George, who slew a dragon that lived in a cave. Then there's the story of the 10th century Irishman who wrote of his encounter with what appears to have been a stegosaurus. In the 1500s, a European scientific book, Historia Animalium, listed several living animals that we would call dinosaurs. A well-known naturalist of the time, Ulysses Aldrovandus, recorded an encounter between a peasant named Baptista and a dragon whose description fits that of the small dinosaur Tannin. The encounter was on May 13, 1572, near Bologna in Italy, and the peasant killed the dragon. Many petroglyphs, drawings carved on rock of dinosaur-like creatures have also been found. I can go on, but you need to know that almost every culture has stories with dragons, aka dinosaurs. And why, if humans did not live with dinosaurs, dragons, why is there art everywhere with us and dinosaurs together? Art and stories? The Institute of Creation, ICR.org, says dragon art defies millions of years. Like this drawing of the ancient Peruvian sauropod, showing how people hunted dinosaurs in groups. And then ChinaDaily.com shows us these dragon-shaped patterns on bronzewares from different time periods in China. Here's more. They found over 32,000 of these 300 BC dinosaur Mexico figurines. This 2100 BC Egyptian pottery showing long-necked dinosaurs. Vikings used dinosaur art, like this 900 to 1000-year-old Viking medal. Here's another dinosaur on an 800 to 550 BC Babylon stone. Here's another dinosaur on the back of this 100 after Christ Nile mosaic. Take a look at this one, 1500 after Christ, Peruvian stone with dinosaurs as well. Look, the list goes on, and we have many interesting stories of dragon encounters, like the famous Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote about seeing a dragon, aka dinosaur. He said, "I went once to a certain place in Arabia, almost exactly opposite the city of Buto, to make inquiries concerning the winged serpents. On my arrival, I saw the black bones and drips of serpents in such numbers as it is impossible to describe. The winged serpent is shaped like a water snake. Its wings are not feathered but resemble very closely those of the bat." And then he continues, he describes a few more things, and then he also describes their habitat. He wrote, "The place where the bones lie, as at the entrance of a narrow gorge between steep mountains, which there open upon a spacious plain communicating with the great plain of Egypt. The story goes that with the spring the winged snakes come flying from Arabia towards Egypt, but are met in this gorge by the birds called ibises, who forbid their entrance and destroy them all." The History of Herodotus, Book 2, page 106. Ask yourself, why do people, thousands of years ago and even hundreds of recently, why did people write and create art about dinosaurs on pottery and on walls and cave paintings? Why? Because they saw them with their own eyes. They were real. Why do we see that the Bible talks about dinosaurs in books like Job and even Isaiah about a flying dinosaur? Because they existed, not millions of years ago, but recently. Isaiah 14 verse 29, "Rejoice not, O Philistia, all of you, that the rod that struck you is broken. For from the serpent's root will come forth an udder, and its fruit will be a flying, fiery serpent." Most of you probably heard about Beowulf. It's a very interesting, entertaining story these days, but it's a real story, an Anglo-Saxon story. This was between 495 and 583, and tells us how he killed a monster called Grendel, and its mother, which was a fiery flying serpent. There are other stories as well of great dragon slayers, like Martha of Tarascon, 48 to 70 after Christ in Tarasc, Saint Sylvester, 300 after Christ in Italy, Sigurd, around 400 after Christ in Northern Europe, Tristan, around 700 after Christ in the British Isles. Did you know that there's also some evidence of Philip, one of the apostles, that he killed a dinosaur, a dragon? Yeah, stories from the early church fathers. Now, this is not recorded in the Bible, so I won't say that I fully agree with this, but you can read in it. Some of these books, like this one, the New Answer book, you can do your own research and read all about it. It is very interesting, and it could have been true. It also contains stories about John Calvin and Charles Spurgeon that talks about dinosaurs, dragons. This fourth book, guys, get it if you can. It also shows a lot of petroglyphs, The famous one by the Anasazi natives, the dinosaur looks like a sauropod. We also see the dinosaur with spikes near Lake Superior in Canada, a flying dragon in Utah, a Stegosaurus-type dinosaur in Angkor, Cambodia, a dinosaur on the 8th gate of Babylon, and a few others. Did you know that just around 100 years ago, it didn't say that dinosaurs were extinct? I'm talking about the dictionary here. It said that they are rare. And just another 100 years or so in the 1800s, the word dinosaur didn't exist. For some reason, people used to believe that dinosaurs existed. Only somehow now in our generation, they are forcing us to believe that no, dinosaurs didn't really exist in your time. They existed millions of years ago. Why? So that they can convince people to believe in a new religion, because you have to believe that it is true, the new religion of evolution, because they want us to doubt the Bible and ultimately doubt God. Now, what about recently, in just the last 200, 100 years, did anyone claim that they've seen a dinosaur? Many. Kent Hovind did actually an amazing job putting all the evidence together. So check it out.
There's a kid taking a bath in a brachiosaur footprint. Picture's on the book right here on the steps. And the reason he had that big foot is because he had a big leg to hold up. His front leg is 20 feet tall. The biggest dinosaur found so far is 60 feet to the top of the head, found in Oklahoma. They say it's going to take them 20 years to dig all the bones out of the ground because it is a government project. They say when it was alive, it probably weighed 100 tons. Now, 100 tons is equal to 14 school buses put together. That means if he was to come by and step on you, you would be deeply impressed by him. You would be road pizza. In the covert of the reed and fens. Now, the word fens is an Old English word that means the swamp. You know, the biggest swamp in the world is in the middle of Africa. It's called the Likwala Swamp. That swamp is huge. Most Americans don't appreciate the size of Africa. Here's what Africa looks like next to the entire United States. Africa's gigantic, okay? That swamp is bigger, is the same size as the state of Florida, 55,000 square miles. That swamp is huge. Did you know that swamp today is 80% unexplored? In 1885, Congo in Africa was taken over by Belgium, and it was called the Belgian Congo for many, many years. There were reports in that swamp from the 1700s when the missionaries went in there and said, man, there are dinosaurs still living in that swamp. Dinosaurs still alive? 1910, New York Herald ran an article about dinosaurs still living in Africa's swamps. Here's a Saturday Evening Post, 1948. There could be dinosaurs still alive in Africa. The natives also talk about an animal they call Mokele Mbembe. Mokele Mbembe? What on earth is that? Well, if you show them the picture of an apatosaurus, they'll say, yep, that's it, Mokele Mbembe. The natives claim these animals live underwater. They're very rare. Of course, they're in the swamp in Africa, and nobody goes out at night anyway, and there's no lights over there at night. But the animals are seen mostly early morning or late in the evening when they come out, and their favorite plant is the Malombo plant. There's Dr. Mackel holding a Malombo plant. Dr. Mackel was a University of Chicago microbiology professor, and he went over there and studied this carefully and came back and wrote a book called A Living Dinosaur. Now, he believes in evolution, but his book is great about the evidence for dinosaurs still living in African swamp. They found footprints of the creatures. A missionary friend of mine was there for 43 years as a missionary, Eugene Thomas. He's in Ohio now. Here's his phone number. Call him up. He was there for 43 years. He said, I had 2 pygmies in my church. It killed one and ate it. Dinosaurs. They said the creature was dark brown in color. The skin appeared slick and smooth, had a long neck and a small head. They heard it. They saw it. It was making a roaring noise. And the government officials even saw it. There's an article here in the Boston Herald newspaper about a group going over to look for the dinosaurs still alive in the Congo swamp. It was 32 feet long, 4,000 pounds. They said, what on earth is that? Captain said, I don't know, but it stinks. When they set it down on the deck, it broke in half and pus oozed out everywhere. So they made a bunch of sketches, took a bunch of pictures, and shoved it overboard. A special stamp was made for Japanese mail in 1977. Now, some people argue that it might have been a basking shark, and I agree, it might have been a basking shark. But the fishermen on board said, we know what basking sharks are. We don't think it is, okay? Basking sharks, they tend to rot away, leaving the head part behind. But there's a basking shark right there. What looked like a dinosaur washed up on the beach in Russia in 1994. It was 39 feet long. This thing apparently is a doctored photo of a shark. Somebody with Photoshop, made it look like a plesiosaur, but actually it's a doctored photo. But so be careful. There's plenty of frauds out there, no question. But the existence of a fraud or counterfeit does not disprove the existence of the original, right? In 2004, a bunch of people over in Papua New Guinea reported a creature like a dinosaur, 10 feet tall, with a head like an alligator, or tail like an alligator, a head like a dog, right there on the island in the city of Kokopo. One lady said she saw it, she ran for her life, seeing a 3-meter tall creature with a head like a dog and a tail like a crocodile. You can read all about it on the internet about this creature seen just in 2004. Japan reports some of these creatures. The North Island, Hokkaido reports them, and the South Island down here of Japan. They call it Ishi in Lake Ikeda. In China, there's reported one called USO, Unidentified Swimming Object. Norway has several reported sightings, as do Swedish lakes, a couple of Swedish lakes up there. They call it, anybody speak Swedish, know how to say that? Stores, Jordan. Close enough, yeah, okay. You don't speak Swedish, do you? You're lying, okay. In Norway, they've got a creature. They say it's very similar to the Loch Ness Monster. Hundreds of folks claim they've seen it. It's in the news occasionally, kind of like Loch Ness, okay? Canada has reported sightings of these creatures, Canadian lake monsters. Nessie's Canadian cousin. There's a lake in the town of Kelowna called the Lake Okanagan. It's a huge lake. It's 80 miles long. I've been up there twice to speak in the town of Kelowna. The natives call this creature the Ogopogo. We sell a book on our table back there if you want to get that. The Ogopogo. Very similar to Loch Ness Monster. Thousands of folks claim they've seen that one. This article says they were the latest among thousands to see something strange in this narrow 80-mile long lake. One guy swam the length of the lake and said the thing came up under him, scared him half to death. I got news articles like crazy about this. She said, I saw Ogopogo twice, this woman says. I interviewed John Caruso. He and his family were sleeping in their boat on the lake. They're camping out on the lake in their big boat. And something bumped the bottom of their boat and woke them all up in the middle of the, early in the morning. They went out and saw 2 Ogopogos swimming across the lake. He went back, grabbed his camera. By the time he got it, it was pretty far away, but he gave me a copy of the video footage of what he saw at about, quite too far away to make out the details. But he said, look, Brother Hovind, I saw the Ogopogo. Many, many folks will go on record and saying, I have seen it. There's one in Cadborough Bay, British Columbia. There's a book about that if you want to read more. A baby caddy was found inside the stomach of a sperm whale. They say it has a short pointed front flippers and a long-necked beast with a horse-like head. One guy caught a baby one with his dip net, drew a sketch of it before he released it. He didn't know what it was, so he let it go. I interviewed this guy for an hour. These 4 guys were fishing in Canada when a creature chased their boat off Cape Sable Island, Nova Scotia, when I was preaching up there. It happened in 1992 when I met him. He said he was 67 when this happened. He'd been fishing out there since he was 5. He said this 40 to 50 foot long creature chased their boat for 1 to 2 miles. He said the neck was 2 feet thick and 8 to 9 feet long. It had 9-inch diameter eyes. He said they were 6 miles south of Cape Sable Island. He said, I don't want to see it again. That's what he told me. This thing washed up on the beach in Newfoundland. Sometimes big blobs wash up. Sometimes it is whale skin, actually. The whale dies, gets eaten, and the layer of blubber, washes up. Sometimes it's a basking shark. Parker Cove, this thing washed up in Parker Cove, Canada. I talked to many folks who said they saw it. A lot of people went and analyzed it. I don't think it's ever positively determined what it is. It might have been a basking shark, but nobody knows positively. But it's gone. People cut pieces off it. The vertebrae do tend to look like shark vertebrae instead of any other kind. It's just interesting that stuff like this washes up on the beach. He collects sightings of the Lake Memphremagog creature between Vermont and Quebec, Canada. Hundreds of folks claim they've seen something in this lake up there in Lake Memphremagog. Creature's been seen in the Potomac River. There's a book about the great New England sea serpent. There's an island off Connecticut and Rhode Island called Block Island, where many folks claim they've seen creatures swimming around out there. They call it the Loch Ness Monster. One washed up in 1996, another was something else washed up in 2004, never was identified that I know of. And I interview people all the time. Lake Erie's apparently got one. Erie's Bessie matches Nessie. They say it's 35 feet long, has a snake-like head. It's in the newspaper once in a while about Lake Erie's monster. Okay, you can read all that for yourself. But a dead baby creature was found on the beach of Lake Erie. The guy took it home, stuffed it, and mounted it. He's a taxidermist. He said, you tell me what it is. I don't know. Dr. Ball bought it. It's in his museum in Texas. It's never been identified. They're not sure what. It may be a fake. Nobody knows, but very interesting little critter. I interviewed the sheriff who saw that was the first guys to see the Scituate Harbor monster, 50 feet long when it washed up on the beach. Everybody started cutting pieces off. By the time they got the photo taken, it was pretty butchered up. Some people argued it's a basking shark. Others said it's a real sea serpent. The health department said, we don't care. It stinks. We're getting it out of here. And so they blew it up with dynamite. California, 1925. This critter washed up on the beach. That's the head. Here's the neck going down to the right. Just the neck was 20 feet long. Everybody that examined it said it was a plesiosaurus. 20-foot neck. One atheist wrote me a letter and said, Hovind, you're so stupid. He said, don't you know that was a whale? I said, now just exactly where is the neck on a whale? Ought to be between the head and the flippers. He said, it's a rare form of Bard's beaked whale. Oh, it's pretty rare, all right, with a 20-foot neck. Duh. The people who saw it said it's a plesiosaurus. Why is that so hard to believe? You know why people resist explanations like that? It goes against their theory. They like the evolution theory because it gives them freedom from God. That's why they like that theory. And we could spend all day on cryptozoology stuff. I have studied this for years and love. I've interviewed now 100 people that claim they've seen a living dinosaur. In New York, 1969, the harbor police chased something much bigger than a whale upriver. Never did catch it. Could have been a zeuglodon or a basilosaurus, I don't know. But the White River monster in Newport, Arkansas has been reported many times. Up until 1973, it apparently disappeared. Arkansas Senate passed a resolution that said it's unlawful to molest, kill, or trample the White River monster. Off the coast of Jupiter, Florida, something's been seen similar to a dinosaur swimming in the ocean out there. You can read the articles for yourself. A lot of this stuff's on my website, Dr. Dino. You can read all about this. There's a lake between New York and Vermont called Lake Champlain, where many people claim they've seen the Lake Champlain monster. I interviewed Sandy that took this picture. I said, Sandy, do you think you saw a dinosaur? She said, no, I know I saw a dinosaur. She and her husband and 2 kids watched it for 10 minutes. 58 people on the Ethan Allen, which capsized earlier a couple months ago, some people think they all ran to one side to see something and flipped the boat over. I don't know, maybe it's just too many Twinkies, but the captain on board back in 1898 said, if you think what I saw was a fish, it weighed 3,000 to 5,000 pounds. The Bible talks about the dragons of the waters. He shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. In Pensacola, where I live, 4 or 5 teenagers went scuba diving back in 1962. One survived the trip. Here's what he said. They were going out to the sunken ship in the Pensacola harbor called the Massachusetts, and here's what he said. I've got tons of stuff on this. He said, we were in an Air Force rescue raft bound for a sunken ship a few miles off the coast. Midway out, we were caught in a storm and dragged out to sea. When the storm cleared, we were in a dense fog. We began to hear strange noises like the splashing of a porpoise and a sickening odor like dead fish. The noise got closer to the raft, and I heard a loud hissing sound. Out in the fog, we saw what looked like a long pole about 10 feet high sticking up out of the water. On top was a bulb-like structure. It bent in the middle and went under. It appeared several more times, getting closer to the raft. The silence was broken once again by something out of the fog. I can only describe it as a high-pitched whine. We panicked. All 5 of us put on our fins and went into the water. Keep together and try for the ship, I yelled. After we got in the water, we got split up in the fog, and from behind I could hear the screams of my comrades, one by one. I got a closer look at the thing just before my last friend went under. The neck was about 12 feet long, brownish green and smooth looking. The head was like a sea turtle, except more elongated. The eyes were green with oval pupils. I don't know how long it was before I heard a scream. It lasted maybe half a minute. Then I heard Warren's call, hey, help me, it's got Brad, I've got to get out of here. His voice was cut off abruptly by a short cry. Brad, Warren, hey, where is everybody? I yelled back at the top of my lungs. Larry now swam with Eric and me. Warren and Brad were nowhere in sight. Right next to Eric, that telephone pole-like figure broke water. I could see the long neck and 2 small eyes. The mouth opened and it bent over. It dove on top of Eric, dragging him under. I screamed and began to swim past the ship. My insides were shaking uncontrollably. He drew a sketch of the thing that killed his friends. He said, I finally made it to the top of the ship and stayed there most of the night. Next morning, I swam to shore, was found by the rescue unit. That's the sketch Brian McCleary drew of what he saw that killed his 4 friends. I was speaking in Fort Walton Beach, Florida one time, and Valerie Bill came to me and said, Mr. Hovind, my stepson, Larry Bill, was one of the kids who was eaten. That story you are telling is correct. But the Pensacola News Journal said, after they interviewed him, they said, this is a beach town. You know, people come here to go swimming. We're not going to report that your friends got eaten by a dinosaur. We're going to report that they drowned. So that's what the newspaper said, 4 teenagers drowned. Panama City, there's something seen there similar. Youth director at a Lutheran church told me his whole youth group was in the van and they saw a creature like that in Panama City Harbor. There have been many reports of dinosaurs still living. There could be some pterodactyls still alive. The natives call the animal the Congomato. If you're in Congo, in Kenya they call it Batamzinga. Steve Romandi was on the Kenya Olympic running team. He called me and said, he was going to school in Louisiana. He said, Mr. Hovind, I saw those creatures. He said, we've got them in my village in Kenya. He said, their favorite food is decaying human flesh. They dig up graves and eat the bodies. They kept talking about the Congomato. Well, we could cover dinosaurs still living for hours, but there have been lots of reports of pterodactyls still around. I get calls about this from people all the time, about pterodactyls being seen in Papua New Guinea or in Indonesia or in Venezuela. Wish we had time to cover all that, about all these pterodactyl sightings. Dave Wetzel went there and said, man, the natives kept talking about this flying ropin that glows in the dark over in Papua New Guinea. It lives on the island right there. So what's the point? You say, Brother Hovind, who cares? Yeah, I think there might be some dinosaurs still alive. And I think we have really been lied to about the dinosaurs. Now, I don't think there's many, and it's probably safe to go to the dorm, okay? Don't get excited and think, wow, we're going to get eaten by a dinosaur. No, it's not that way. The hallway will be clear tonight, I assure you, okay? But the Indians had a legend called the Thunderbird. They said a giant bird got hit by lightning. When they found it 3 days later, the buzzards had picked the bones clean, but they said the wingspan was 20 feet and had a bony bump on the back of its head. The Indian prayer sticks, to this day, have the head of a pterodactyl on them. Now, Henry Ford put an eagle on the taillight of his Thunderbird. It should have been a pterodactyl. You blew it, Henry. French explorers Jacques Marquette and Joliet stopped near what now is the town of St. Louis and reported they saw a big ugly bird painted on the cliff on the other side in Alton, Illinois. The Indians said, oh, that's a Piasaw bird. A great chief killed him years ago. They painted the picture up there for years. They finally put a big metal plaque. There's me down below it for scale. They took it down for fear the plaque would fall. I guess they just recently put it back up. I don't know. But if you go to Alton, Illinois, you'll see Piasaw, Piasaw Dairy Queen. It's pretty famous over there, whatever the Piasaw bird was. Okay. And we talk a lot about that. People say, well, Brother Hovind, why do you speak about dinosaurs? Well, for one thing, Satan's using them to teach his gospel. It's time Christians, put up a defense. Christians are confused where they fit in. They are a great evangelistic tool. Kids will gather around you like crazy when you get dinosaurs. He's the chief of the ways of God. Well, then God ought to get the glory. Now, the Bible also talks about Leviathan, but that's a whole other story. We'll cover Leviathan some other time. So basically, God made everything in 6 days. Dinosaurs lived with man. People have killed most of them. There could be a few still alive. And Christians need to quit worrying about dinosaurs and start using them for God's glory.
Thanks, Kent. I didn't even show you all of it, just some of the evidence that he gathered. And here's the sad part of this. These people who want to force evolution down your throat, who say that dinosaurs existed millions of years ago, they will never show you this evidence. Even if people find new evidence, they will do their best to hide it. So even if there's more evidence out there, they won't show it to you because they control the media. They control social media. They control big corporations. They control everything. Now they just want to control you. They teach these lies to you in school, and they use your own tax dollars to do it. You see, they want you to believe their newfound religion, man-made religion, instead of believing Jesus Christ. Because you see, it is a religion. You have to believe that it is true, instead of believing God. And they force this on everyone in school. Instead of teaching all these different worldviews and showing all the evidence for creationism, for evolution, even other religions if they want to show all the evidence so people can make up their own minds, because that's how God created us. He's given us the freedom to have free will, free choice, because He wants us to choose Him out of love, right? But no, they want to force people to just look at a one-sided religion belief, which is called evolution. And for some of you Christians out there who say the dinosaurs never existed, you need to look at the Bible. The Hebrew word is Tannin, dragon. God said that the top of His creation, of all the animals, is the dragon, not the lion. He never said that the lion is the king of nature. Read it with me. God says in Job 40 verse 15, "Behold, behemoth, which I made as I made you," which means He really made behemoth. Verse 16, "Behold His strength in His loins, and His power in the muscles of His belly. He makes His tail stiff like a cedar. His sinews of His thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs like bars of iron. He is the first of the works of God." Wow, the first of His creation, the behemoth, strong, powerful, big. And God goes on and He describes him even more. And then He also starts to describe another dragon, Leviathan. In the next chapter, 41, "Can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook, or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hands on him. Remember the battle. You will not do it again. Behold, the hope of man is false. He is laid low even at the sight of him. No one is so fierce that he dares to stir him up. Who then is he who can stand before me?" These dragons are the top of God's creation. A behemoth, a leviathan, not the elephant, not a hippopotamus or a lion. Listen to how God enjoys His creation. Verse 12, "I will not keep silence concerning His limbs, or His mighty strength, or His godly frame. Who can strip off His outer garment? Who would come near Him with a bridle? Who can open the doors of His face? Around His teeth is terror. His back is made of rows of shields, shut up closely as with a seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They clasp each other and cannot be separated. His sneezings flash forth light, and His eyes are like the eyelids of the dawn. Out of His mouth go flaming torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Out of His nostrils comes forth smoke, as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame comes forth from His mouth. In His neck abides strength, and terror dances before Him. The folds of His flesh stick together, firmly cast on Him, and immovable. His heart is hard as a stone, hard as the lower millstone. When He raises Himself up, the mighty are afraid. At the crashing they are beside themselves. Though the sword reaches Him, it does not avail, nor the spear, the dart, or the javelin. He counts iron as straw, and bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make Him flee. For Him, sling stones are turned to stubble. Clubs are counted as stubble. He laughs at the rattle of javelins. His underparts are like sharp potsherds. He spreads Himself like a threshing sledge on the mire. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. Behind Him He leaves a shining wake. One would think the deep to be white-haired. On earth there is not His like, a creature without fear. He sees everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. Wow. You know, a lot of Christians today just need to be like a child and read the Bible as it is. Have faith like a child. This is God Himself describing the dragons, the top of His creation, having joy in it, in the strength of these dragons. Now, if you want to know more what the world was like before the time of the flood, in the antediluvian period, then please watch this video here. That's from my other channel. I just did it on there. It's going to be a very interesting video you don't want to miss. So click on it, and before you go, remember, God loves you, and I love you too. Bye.